Now, this may be my greatest Rolex yet to hit my collection, the gorgeous 116508. The combination of full yellow gold, the Daytona cachet, the Chronograph sports watch look, and the 40mm comfort fit on the wrist. I was lucky enough to purchase this brand new from the authorized dealer and pick it up just in time for Christmas. It was an unexpected way to cap off the year. We'll do a short unboxing, reveal my buying story, and what you need to do to get one of these. I'll include some macro shots of the watch dial and the case back, which has those secret gold symbols. And I'll show some wrist shots to show how it looks on the watch and give an idea of how it feels on the wrist. And I'll compare this with some of my other Rolex to see how it stacks up. For the free gifts I got from the AD this time was a Rolex branded ball cap and a polishing cloth for the watch. This one comes with the big boy large box because it's full precious metal, and you can tell that it belongs in a large box because of the L on the white hang tag. There's a misconception that diamond Rolex also comes in a large box, but that's incorrect unless the watch is also fully precious metal. A diamond dial or a diamond bezel Rolex on a steel or a two-tone Rolex will still come in a medium box. The boxes arrive at the authorized dealer from Rolex separately from the actual watch, so the AD has to match up the box with the watch afterwards. Sometimes they make a mistake and accidentally put a medium box on a precious metal watch, and that's happened to me. But it doesn't mean that the watch or the box are not genuine. Comparing the large box to the medium box, there's actually not a huge difference in size. The 116508 is not easy to get from the authorized dealer. There are plenty available on the used market, but that requires paying a premium price above retail. The Chronograph Daytona is the most premium and exclusive line of Rolex. The movement itself is more complex to make than some of the other movements, and they make fewer of these compared to other sports watches. The estimate is that Rolex probably makes 20,000 to 40,000 Daytonas per year in all the different versions. Since there's so many different versions available, I'm guessing that the full precious metal models are much more limited in quantity than the steel or two-tone and Oyster Flex models. Each authorized dealer gets very few allocations for a precious metal Daytona per year, and you need to be the right customer or be lucky enough to be there at the right time to get one. And I think Rolex is happy with the high demand and limited production runs of the Daytona, since I think they're positioning the Daytona as their top-of-the-line sports model. That's why there's so many options of precious metal and diamonds in the Daytona line. It drives up the cost and the profitability and the luxury of the Daytona and promotes the exclusivity of the Daytona. You can watch my previous video to see my buying history from this authorized dealer this year, but for this Daytona I did not specifically ask for this model. I originally asked for the white gold black diamond dial, and then they called and said that the two-tone black diamond dial was available, and I went ahead and purchased that. And then just last week they texted again and said that this model was available. I thought about it for about 20 minutes and said yes right away. I wasn't able to drive down and pick it up until this week, so I did put down a $5,000 deposit last week. I posted a teaser on my channel last week, and shout out to Simon, who was the first to guess the correct model. And the total retail price of this is $37,550, but I did hear from my AD that there will be a price increase on January 1st, which is just in a few days. He didn't have the price list, but even if it's 3% increase, that would be an extra $1,000. So I was just able to get this with the lower price. And on the gray market, it's posting for $48,000 to $55,000. So it's a bit unfair as to who gets allocated these Daytonas. It's not a strict waiting list. It's not a democratic process, and they don't go down a list according to when you put your name down. but buying history and relationship and trustworthiness definitely helps. The year was 2016 when they changed from the model 116528 to the model 116508, which is the current one. You can tell immediately because of the bezel. The numerals are now wrapped around the bezel and more legible. But for the most part, the design of the Daytona has been around for a long time. It hasn't changed as radically as the super case of the Submariner or the GFTs. The case design of the Daytona has been basically unchanged since 1988 when the 16500 was released. In some ways, the design looks a little bit dated. The ceramic bezel Daytonas seem more fresh than this, but this Daytona has that classic Daytona look. The 4130 movement is also well established, and it was launched in the year 2000. It has significantly fewer moving parts than some other chronographs, and this enhances the reliability and accuracy of the Daytona. They have made small improvements over time, such as changing to the blue parachrome in 2005. The movement has 44 joules and a 72-hour power reserve, and it's COSC certified to +2 to -2 seconds per day. The chronograph functions with a vertical clutch column wheel, and this makes the chronograph hand start smoother without the jumping when you push the pusher. And this also means that you can run the chronograph continuously without causing damage to the movement. The pushers are screw down, and this helps with water resistance. It prevents you from accidentally pushing down the pushers while you're underwater, which would introduce water into the case. But still, this Daytona only has 100 meters of water resistance. Rolex calls this dial the Intense Black and Champagne Color dial. It's also been nicknamed the Paul Newman dial because those subdials are in a solid, retro-looking Art Deco style, similar to Paul Newman's Rolex, except his was in steel and the subdials were solid black. The subdials on this one only look solid champagne at a distance, but when you get up close, that's when it gets interesting. The center of the subdials have those fine concentric engraved circles. I think you would call it a snail dial. And the hands of each subdial have that matte black kind of retro look to it. As usual, the second subdial is on the bottom, the minute subdial is on the right, and the hour subdial is on the left. It also has that traditional Daytona text curved above the bottom subdial. But this one has extra red accents with the chronograph hand in red and the outer chapter ring in red. And this gives it a unique look and a more sporty look. The main downside of this dial design is the poor legibility. With the gold hour and minute hands overlying the gold colored or champagne colored subdials, it's hard to tell the time at a glance. But if you need a tool watch strictly to tell time, this gold Daytona is probably not the right choice. But there are exceptions to that. Sometimes the light just bounces off the angled hour and minutes hands and just seems to light up those hands. I like that Rolex doesn't have just a single black dial. It has their usual black dial on the Sea Dweller and Submariner, and it has the bright black dial on the Sky Dweller and the Oyster Perpetual, and it has this style which is called an Intense Black, and it has even more exotic dials on the Date 8 and Yachtmaster 42 millimeter. I couldn't figure out the dial color on this Daytona. It's called Intense Black, but on the pictures it looked like a regular black dial, but in person it actually is a matte black dial, and in some instances it's almost a speckled black dial. The hour markers are filled with chromolite, and I will say that the luminescence is pretty decent. The solid gold of the case and the bracelet gives it an extra reassuring weight on the wrist, It's not extra heavy, but it's definitely heavier than steel, and it gives this impression of a better build quality than steel or even two-tone. On the scale, the two-tone Daytona weighs in at 149 grams, and the full gold Daytona weighs in at a substantial more 193 grams. It feels more dense and better put together than a steel watch. It's hard to describe, but the luxury feeling you get when putting on a solid gold Rolex just makes it definitely worth the extra price at retail. So once you get accustomed to wearing solid gold, it's difficult to go back to stainless steel. I needed to have one link removed from the 12 o'clock side and two links removed from the 6 o'clock side to fit my 6.5-inch wrist. There's also a 3-point micro adjustment within the clasp and the Easy Link extension within the clasp. But I was disappointed to see that the links did not have the ceramic sleeves over the pins. My AD told me that the Daytonas don't have the ceramic sleeves, and I was surprised to hear this because I never heard that before. My Day-Date and my gold Sky Dweller and my gold Pepsi all have the ceramic sleeves. If anyone can confirm in the comments that all of the Daytonas do not have the ceramic sleeves, let me know in the comments. By the way, don't lose any of these extra links because ordering an extra one of these gold links costs about $600 each. The ceramic sleeves would have been very helpful to prevent a bracelet stretch, so I'll have to be careful with keeping this bracelet clean. Looking at the back of the case, as usual for Rolex, it has a plain case back, but it does have those symbols on the back of each lug, which signify that this gold is a Swiss gold. These symbols are required by Swiss law to be placed on any solid gold watch made in Switzerland. So the AU is the symbol for gold, and 750 indicates 75% pure gold, which is 18 karat gold. The 40mm Daytona case is perfect for a small wrist or a medium-sized wrist. For me, my 6.5-inch wrists, the Daytona fits very comfortably. It's definitely not too small for my wrist, and it doesn't overhang my wrist either. I heard someone say that it's actually a 39mm case, so I measured it myself, and I am getting around 39 millimeters. The shape of the case is designed so the lugs slightly curve down so it conforms to the wrist better. And the case is very thin considering it has that chronograph movement in it, so it doesn't stand up off the wrist. So this watch is great to wear with a suit. It can be easily covered up with a shirt cuff, and it's fine for casual use also. But if it is exposed, be prepared for the attention that it gets and the glances you'll get at the bright yellow gold on the wrist. I would have never predicted a few years ago that now I would be so into solid gold Rolex, especially yellow gold Rolex. I just thought it was too flashy or over the top at the time, but now that I've gotten used to it and I've tried it out, it's difficult to go back to just plain stainless steel. And getting the Rolex straight from the authorized dealer and at retail, it makes it just that much extra special. Putting this in the watch box, we'll see how it can pair up with some of my other watches. I think my favorite pair up would be this Daytona and the white gold Pepsi with the blue dial. Both are in solid gold with that reassuring weight, but the Daytona is more dressy and the Pepsi is more casual, more sporty, and brings in more color. It's also a little bit more subdued because of the white gold, and it almost looks like steel to most people. And for a third watch, I can bring in the Milgauss for more color, a lighter feel on the wrist, and a more casual watch with that Z blue dial. And for a different kind of matchup, I could pair this with the Rolex Day-Date in 36 millimeters. Maybe a little bit too similar because of the all yellow gold, but the size is different, the dial color is different, and the bracelet style is different. These two together have that executive boardroom CEO type of aesthetic. Both are top of the line Rolex and status symbols. But to bring in a third watch, I could bring in the Sky Dweller with the blue dial. This is also very sought after and difficult to get. It's kind of a more sporty watch too, and a more of a stealth wealth type of watch. I think this Daytona will hold its value over time, especially as Rolex continues to increase their retail prices almost on a yearly basis. But it won't explode in value. I think the green dial Daytona and the blue dial are the ones that are trading highly above retail price. As far as the stainless steel Daytonas, I prefer the black dial over the white dial, and I would have purchased the black dial stainless steel years ago if it was ever offered to me, but that's been very difficult for me to get. And I think paying the markup on the gray market for the stainless steel Daytona is just crazy. I don't think it's worth that price at all. And getting into those price ranges, you're getting into full yellow gold or full white gold Daytona range. And I would much prefer that than paying close to that much for a stainless steel watch. And I'm not buying from the gray market anymore. I feel much more connected to my watch if it's straight from the authorized dealer, and it's such a better experience getting it from the authorized dealer. So I'm very happy so far with my two Daytonas. Let me know in the comments what your favorite Daytona is. So where do I go from here? I'm not planning on doing a full collection video, but I brought these out of the safety deposit box to give you a glimpse of my personal Rolex display case. All of my Rolex are from an authorized dealer except for these two, and once I get the new Explorer 36, I can sell the old one, but this pre-ceramic Pepsi GMT will be difficult to part with. I never had a grand strategy of collecting. I just had a general direction, and I took what I could get, but things are getting out of hand now, and I think I need to have more focus in the future. So I need to take some time to consider where I want to go with the collection. The only other brand I would consider is Patek Philippe, but I don't have time to drive to New York City several times to establish a connection. So far my favorite brand is still Rolex.